I want you to close your eyes for just a second. I want you to imagine the sound of a heavy, rough stone grinding against another stone. A low, rhythmic, crushing sound. Grind, scrape, silence. Grind, scrape, silence. Now imagine the smell. Damp earth, old sweat. The stale metallic scent of iron chains that have rusted against skin for months. This is where we find him, the man who was once the unstoppable force of nature, the man who tore a lion apart with his bare hands, the man who picked up the city gates of Gaza. We're talking thousands of pounds of bronze and timber, and carried them up a mountain just to prove a point. Samson. But we don't see that version of him anymore. Now he's in the Philistine prison at Gaza. His eyes have been gouged out. He is bound in bronze fetters, and he is doing the work of a beast of burden, pushing a millstone in circles, day after day, in total darkness. It's a terrifying image, isn't it? But what scares me the most isn't the blindness. It isn't the chains. It isn't even the humiliation of his enemies laughing at him from the galleries. What scares me is how he got there. Because Samson didn't wake up one morning, lose his hair, and end up in chains by lunchtime. It wasn't a sudden accident. It was a slow, quiet, imperceptible leak. And if we are honest, really honest, just you and me right now, that is exactly how we feel sometimes, isn't it? Maybe you haven't been captured by an army, maybe you haven't lost your eyesight, but you know the feeling of the grind. You know the feeling of waking up and realizing that the fire you used to have, that sharpness, that spiritual vitality, that distinct masculine edge that made you feel like you could handle whatever life threw at you, it feels diminished. It feels like the volume has been turned down. You're going through the motions, you're showing up to work, you're trying to be a good husband, a good father, a good man, but underneath the surface, you feel a little bit like you're just pushing that stone in circles. You wonder, where did my strength go? I used to feel God so clearly. I used to have so much purpose. When did I get so tired? That is the question we are going to answer today. Because the story of Samson is often taught to us as a warning about bad relationships. We hear, "Don't date Delilah," and we think, okay, got it. But that is the surface level reading. That's the Sunday school version for the kids. The real tragedy of Samson and the real secret to reclaiming your own strength goes much deeper than a bad haircut or a deceptive woman. It's about the covenants we make in the quiet. It's about the small compromises that seem harmless until they aren't. It's about the difference between acting strong and actually being powerful in the eyes of God.
We are going to walk through the 3 specific ways Samson drained his own reservoir, and I'm going to show you exactly how to plug those leaks in your own life. And I have to warn you, the 3rd point we're going to discuss is something very few people talk about, but it is usually the primary reason men feel spiritually castrated in the modern world. So, if you feel like you've been drifting, or if you just want to make sure you never end up pushing that millstone in the dark, stay with me. We need to go back to the beginning, before the fall, to understand what true strength actually looks like. Let's take a breath, let's get real, because your strength didn't leave you all at once. And the good news, it doesn't have to stay gone. You know, there is a very dangerous lie that strong men tell themselves. I've told it to myself. I bet you've whispered it in the back of your mind too. It's the lie that says, I can handle it. I can get close to the edge without falling off. I'm different. I'm special. We look at Samson and we think he was just a fool for love. We think he was just a guy with a high libido who got tricked. But if you look closer at the text in Judges, you realize that Samson's strength didn't leave him when his hair was cut. That was just the final receipt. The transaction had been happening for years. Let's look at a moment in his life that usually gets skipped over. Before he ever met Delilah, Samson was walking down to Timnath, and a young lion roared against him. The Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he tore that lion apart as if it were a young goat. Incredible power, right? God-given dominance. But watch what happens next. A while later, he returns to that same spot. He sees the carcass of the lion he killed. And inside that dead, rotting carcass, a swarm of bees had built a hive. There was honey inside. Now, Samson was a Nazirite. That means he was set apart. He had made a specific vow to God to be different, to be separate. Part of that agreement was that he was never to touch a dead body. It made him ceremonially unclean. It broke the connection. But Samson looked at that honey. It looked sweet, it looked satisfying, and he thought, I can just take a little bit. Who's going to know? I'm Samson. I'm the chosen one. The rules don't apply to me the same way. So he reached into the rot, scooped out the honey, and ate it. He broke his vow for a mouthful of sweetness. He traded his integrity for a sugar rush.
And here's the hard truth that hurts me to say, but we need to hear it. We do the exact same thing. We are men who want the power of God in our lives. We want to be the protectors, the providers, the spiritual leaders. But then we scroll through things on our phones that we know we shouldn't be looking at. We engage in gossip at work because it feels good to be in the inner circle. We tell white lies to our wives to avoid an uncomfortable conversation. We reach into the rot because the honey tastes sweet in the moment. And we think, I'm still strong. Look, I went to church on Sunday. Look, I'm still providing for my family. Nothing bad happened. But something did happen. The current got weaker. The signal got deeper in the static. See, this is the pivot point. This is where we have to change our definition of strength. The world tells you that strength is something you possess, like big biceps or a heavy bank account. But the scriptures teach us something radically different. Strength isn't something you own. Strength is something you host. Think of it like electricity. You are the wire. The power doesn't come from the copper. The power flows through the copper. But for that power to flow, the insulation has to be intact. The connection has to be pure. In the tradition of the ancient prophets, this concept is often linked to the idea of holiness. Not holier than thou, judgmental religiosity, but holiness. Being set apart, being distinct. When we compromise our integrity in private, when we touch the dead things of this world, the cynicism, the lust, the anger, we aren't just breaking a rule. We are insulating ourselves from the source of our power. We are telling God, I don't value your presence as much as I value this momentary pleasure. Samson didn't lose his strength because of a haircut. He lost it because he stopped treating his relationship with God as a sacred thing. He started treating it as a common thing. He forgot that his power was borrowed, not owned. And I know what you're thinking. Okay, I've messed up. I've reached for the honey. I've drifted. Is it too late for me? Absolutely not. But getting that power back requires more than just saying sorry. It requires understanding the specific mechanics of how that connection is rebuilt. It requires us to look at the 3 specific lines Samson crossed so we can draw those lines back in the sand of our own lives.
We're going to dive deep into that right now. This is the meat of it. This is where the rubber meets the road. So let's go there. Let's talk about the hair. To the modern mind, this is the part of the story that feels the most ridiculous. It sounds like a fairy tale, doesn't it? A guy has long hair, he's Superman. He gets a buzz cut, he's weak. It defies logic. But that is because we are looking at the physical mechanism instead of the spiritual principle. The hair wasn't magic. The hair was a token. It was a physical symbol of a spiritual agreement. In the ancient world, and Honestly, in the spiritual physics that still govern our lives today, God works through covenants. He says, if you do this, I will do that. He binds himself to us. Samson's long hair was his daily reminder that he belonged to God first and himself second. Every time he brushed it, every time it got in his eyes, every time someone mocked him for it, he was reminded, I am set apart. And this brings us to the most terrifying verse in the entire Old Testament. It's Judges 16, verse 20. Delilah has finally cut his hair. The Philistines are upon him. Samson wakes up from his sleep, and listen to what he says to himself. He says, I will go out as at other times before and shake myself. He thought he could just do what he always did. He thought he could just flex. He thought the power was his. And then the scripture adds this devastating sentence. And he wist not that the Lord was departed from him. He didn't know. He stood up to fight, reached for that supernatural strength that he had relied on for 20 years, and grabbed nothing. Just air. Just his own human limitation. This is the deep theology we need to wrestle with. It is possible to operate on spiritual momentum long after the actual engine has died. It is possible to be a leader in your home, to say the right prayers, to look the part, while the actual presence of God has quietly stepped out of the room because we made it an inhospitable place for him to stay. God is a gentleman. He will not force his residence in a heart that is crowded with idols. He won't scream over the noise of your distractions. If you constantly invite Delilah in, if you constantly invite the values of the world, the lust for validation, the obsession with comfort, he will eventually respect your decision and withdraw.
And that withdrawal is rarely a thunderclap. It's a silence. It's a slow fade. Samson's downfall wasn't that he fell in love. It was that he became common. The word holy in Hebrew, kadosh, literally means cut off or separate. To be holy is to be uncommon, to be different. Samson was called to be uncommon, but he craved to be common. He wanted to party with the Philistines. He wanted their women. He wanted their approval. He wanted to be one of the guys while still holding the power of a prophet. And men, we do this. We want the power of Peter and Paul, but we want the lifestyle of the Kardashians. We want the deep, resonant authority that makes demons tremble when we pray for our children, but we also want to watch the same garbage entertainment, laugh at the same crude jokes, and hold the same cynical grudges as the rest of the world. We treat our covenants like a light switch we can flip on and off. I'll be holy on Sunday, but Tuesday night is for me. But power doesn't work that way. The vessel must be clean. We'll get to the practical steps of how to clean that vessel in a moment, but right now, I need you to feel the weight of this. Samson gave away the secret of his heart to Delilah. Why? Because she pestered him? Because she annoyed him? The text says she vexed his soul unto death. She wore him down. But I think there's a deeper reason. I think Samson was tired of the burden of being different. I think part of him wanted to be normal. He wanted to put down the weight of his calling. So he told her, "If I am shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man." Like any other man. That was his tragedy. He was born to be extraordinary, but he settled for being ordinary. And I'm talking to you right now, yes, you listening to this, because I know that same temptation is in you. The temptation to just blend in, to stop fighting the current, to just be like any other man, to be a mediocre husband, a distracted father, a lukewarm believer. But you were not designed to be like any other man.
You were designed to host the glory of God. You were designed to be a dangerous force for good in a dark world. The question isn't, did I lose my salvation? The question is, did I lose my distinctiveness?
When people look at you, do they see a man who is governed by a different set of laws? Or do they just see a guy who is slightly nicer than his neighbor, but essentially operates on the same software? If you feel that convicting sting in your chest right now, don't run from it. That's not shame. That's the embers of your old strength trying to catch fire again. That's the Spirit waking you up before the Philistines get there. We have to draw a line in the sand. We have to decide that being set apart matters more to us than being comfortable. Samson didn't realize he was in trouble until the chains were already on. But you are realizing it right now, and that means you still have a choice. So, how do we fix it? How do we regrow the hair, metaphorically speaking? How do we rebuild that reservoir of power so that when we shake ourselves, the mountains actually move? It's not as complicated as you might think, but it is going to require you to do 3 hard things. 3 things that go against everything our culture teaches us about self-care and freedom. Let's get into the application. If the goal is to reclaim the true, deep reservoir of masculine strength, that power that allows you to bless, to protect, and to lead with confidence, then we have to move past theory and into actionable steps. This isn't about trying harder. This is about structural repair. When you lose strength, you don't need a motivational speech. You need a blueprint. So let's look at the 3 leaks Samson opened in his own life and what the countermeasure is for each one. 1. The discipline of the immediate cut. Samson's first major compromise was touching the dead lion for honey. It was a small violation that led to a great pleasure. It was the first time he said, "I know the rule, but I am strong enough to ignore it just this once." The countermeasure is simple, but painful. You must immediately identify and absolutely cut off your source of temporary pleasure derived from spiritual compromise. I'm talking about the dead things you are reaching into for a taste of sweetness. For some men, it's that specific social media feed. For others, it's a habitual, low-grade cynicism about God or your spouse. For many, it's the quiet, daily surrender to the lust that demands your attention for 5 minutes of self-indulgence.
When Samson touched the rot, he became unclean. When we engage in things that violate the inner sanctity we promise God to uphold, we become disconnected. You are not cleansing your spirit by scrolling through filth, or by nursing resentment, or by making that quick, shady deal. You are draining your battery. Your strength flows directly from your personal holiness. Therefore, step 1 is a ruthless inventory. What is the lion's carcass you keep going back to? Do not minimize it. Do not rationalize it. Draw a line in the sand right now and say, "I will not reach into the rot for sweetness today." Make the cut immediate, absolute, and non-negotiable. 2. The vow of distinctiveness. Samson was supposed to be separate, a difference visible to the entire world. His power depended on the fact that he was distinct from the Philistine culture that surrounded him. But he kept chasing them. He married one. He visited the territory of his enemies. He wanted their comfort more than his calling. The countermeasure is identify and embrace the outward symbols of your covenant with God. If your faith is only an invisible belief, it is easily ignored. What are the outward signs that mark you as a man who is set apart? It's not just your attendance record, it's your language, it's your media, it's the way you handle money, It's the depth of respect you show your wife in public and in private. For example, if you claim to follow Christ, yet your language is indistinguishable from the most crude environment in your workplace, you have lost your distinctiveness. If your entertainment consumption is constantly driving you closer to lust, fear, or anxiety, you are seeking comfort from the wrong source. Your strength will only return when you decide to be uncommon. You have to be willing to be mocked. You have to be willing to be the one guy who walks out of the movie, the one guy who doesn't join the gossip, the one guy who says, "No, I actually don't swear." This is the hair, metaphorically speaking. It is the visible boundary that protects your internal reservoir. Stop trying to look like the Philistines. 3. The integrity of silence. This is the one that got him killed. Samson gave away the sacred secret of his heart to Delilah because she wore him down, but also because he cheapened his own spiritual life. He told her the source of his power. He profaned the temple. The countermeasure is, guard your deepest, most sacred experiences and aspirations with absolute silence. Stop talking about your prayers to show off how righteous you are. Stop detailing your acts of service for social media validation. Stop talking about the deep convictions God has given you to people who have proven they don't value sacred things.
When you disclose the secret of your faith, your marriage, or your spiritual struggles to those who will only use it to manipulate, judge, or mock you, you give away a piece of your inner defense system. Your most precious interactions with the divine, the moments where God speaks clearly to you, those must remain protected. When you cheapen them by using them for attention or social currency, you treat the sacred as common, and the power leaves. A man of quiet, deep faith has a resilience that a boastful man can never touch. I know a voice might be whispering in your ear right now, "This is impossible. I've tried this before and failed. I lasted 3 days and then I went right back to my old habit." And I want you to listen to me on this. Failure is not final, but complacency is fatal. The strength isn't in your ability to be perfect for 30 days. The strength is in your ability to get back up immediately when you fall. If you reach for the honey, you spit it out instantly. You don't negotiate. You don't wallow in self-pity. You confess it to God, you forgive yourself, and you put your feet back on the path. The moment you decide to turn back, the power starts to flow again. The Spirit is always waiting to return to the man who is sincerely willing to clean the vessel. You are building a spiritual well here, not a fragile glass sculpture. Wells can withstand storms, but they require constant maintenance and debris removal. So let's look at how we sustain this. Let's talk about the specific challenge you need to embrace this week to start filling that reservoir back up. We often forget that the story of Samson doesn't end with him grinding corn in the dark. It ends with one final, desperate prayer. The Philistines brought him out to their great feast to make sport of him. They gathered thousands of people in their temple of Dagon. And as Samson stood there, blind and broken, he asked the boy guiding him to place his hands on the 2 main support pillars. And there, in the deepest, most crushing moment of his life, he prays. He doesn't pray for freedom. He doesn't pray for vengeance. He prays for one last moment of the strength he had so carelessly thrown away. O Lord God, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen me, I pray thee, only this once, O God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. And the record tells us that in that moment the Lord honored his faith. Samson pushed with everything he had left, and in his death he accomplished more than he had in his entire life of self-indulgent freedom.
The beautiful, terrible truth of this ending is that redemption is always on the table. Even when you feel blind, chained, and utterly ruined by your own choices, even when you feel like you have nothing left to offer, if you turn and ask for strength, even only this once, God will honor the intention of your heart. But here is my question to you. Why wait until the pillars are shaking? Why wait until the millstone has worn you down? You don't have to be Samson. You don't have to wait until you're a casualty of your own compromise before you ask for the power you were promised. Your strength is tied to your separation. Your power is tied to your promise. You were not designed for spiritual mediocrity. You were not designed to be a passive participant in your own life. You were designed to host a divine, resilient, masculine authority that changes rooms when you walk in them and blesses generations after you're gone. And that capacity is still there. It's dormant. It's chained, yes, but it is not dead. So, let's take everything we talked about, the lion's honey, the Delilah entanglement, the sacred silence, and distill it into a single, concrete challenge for the next 7 days. Your assignment is this. For the next 7 days, you are going to draw your own personal Nazirite line in the sand, and you are going to focus only on step 1, the discipline of the immediate cut. Identify one small, specific habit that you know is the rot in your life. That thing that feels like a compromise, that tiny moment of sweetness you reach for, but which ultimately leaves you feeling empty. It might be scrolling mindlessly for 15 minutes before bed. It might be an unnecessary purchase. It might be a specific website. Identify that single habit, and for 7 days, you will practice the absolute immediate refusal of that compromise. When the temptation arrives, you will not negotiate. You will not rationalize. You will simply say, I am a man of covenant. I am set apart. I will not reach into the rot. And when you succeed, even for a single moment, stop and feel the clean surge of vitality returning. That is the Spirit affirming your choice. This isn't about being perfect for a week. It's about restoring the connection. It's about building a muscle that has atrophied. It is about proving to yourself that you value the power of God in your life more than you value temporary comfort or pleasure. You were born for greatness. You were given a calling. The power, the fire, the focus, it is still yours for the taking. But you must stop treating the sacred things in your life as if they were common. Don't let your power leak. Protect your promises. Reclaim your strength. Go out there and shake yourself. But this time, make sure the Lord is with you when you do it.